Hello folks, this is awkward because I'm in the office early in the morning by myself, but I've been doing some thinking and I feel like I'm halfway through maybe a useful thought, so I want to show you how much I've got of it and hopefully finish off the thinking with the rest of you, because I haven't got it all, but there's something going on that feels good. So I'm trying to, I've been going around and talking with a lot of Enspiral people one at a time and trying to figure out what's working well and what needs improvement and where are our strong suits and all that sort of stuff. And you know, we've got these concepts like you've got a contributor and a member, you've got proto-ventures and ventures, and there's we always invent this language to try and encapsulate this is the important structure that helps us function. And I'm sort of stumbling up against this sense that maybe there's some new structures that are really important. So yeah, that's why I want to share them early and shape them with you. So the first one, this is I'll sort of start from say a new person arriving into Enspiral, and then go through the sequence as kind of was to having more deeper engagement. So when you first arrive, the idea is that you have a steward, and that's an idea we've talked about a lot this year. And the steward is like a peer-to-peer connection, so you've got just one person that's going to connect with you, primarily because a group can't actually support someone. You need a person to support someone. And alongside that, what's emerging now, which Josh was leading out on, is this idea of a cohort, and that's bringing a bunch of people together and to have some kind of shared experience. It's not super intentional. It's not like we are going to do this, but it's just we have some kind of sense of togetherness. And both that steward and that cohort thing, I think, are addressing this really deep need that we all have for undeserving acceptance. And that for me is the phrase that I use to describe that feeling when you first arrive at Enspiral and you're like, oh my God, I found my tribe, this deep longing that you've had, and maybe you didn't even know you had, it suddenly gets resolved when you meet all these other people that have the same kind of way of thinking about the world that you do. So that's really about people stuff. So then once you're here and you're supported and you're having this shared experience and full of good vibes, then it's okay, what do you do? And I'm feeling the need to name a thing. I just called it a project. I don't know if that's useful, but I'm thinking about most of the people in the network are doing cool stuff, and I'm just calling those things projects. So people, usually they got introduced because they met at some kind of conference or something like that, and they've just been showing off the school project they've been working on. I'm doing a cryptocurrency, or I'm doing a community garden, or whatever. So the pattern for that is I'm doing something and I need some kind of contributors. So that's someone bringing their thing into Enspiral and saying, I need some support on this place. And I think that step should be really lightweight, and we don't really have good processes for people broadcasting what they're doing, and we don't have processes for people asking for support on what kind of contribution they want on their project. The other thing, which is very similar, so I put it alongside, is the working group. So working groups have just emerged in the last couple of weeks, and they're already really humming. So it seems obvious that this is the right tool for the right job. And it's like a project, but it's actually internally focused. So it's I've written, the network needs something, and so this is what we're doing about it. And the working group is kind of working on behalf of the network. So, for example, we just had a couple of weeks ago this formation of a thing called the Finances Working Group, and we know that we've got to make some new decisions around how we handle finances in the Enspiral Foundation. So this working group has turned up and said, look, we'll facilitate that decision-making process. It's going to be on the whole network to make the decision, but we're going to do all the research and make recommendations, and this is the network maintenance piece. Then over here, you can start to get a deeper level of commitment. So the first thing is the livelihood pod. And I think what's really distinctive about the livelihood pod, so the first example that we've got of this is Root Systems. Root Systems is a consulting group that's in the process of coming out of Enspiral Developer Academy. And the distinctive thing about them is that there's 5 people and they've pledged to share their income. So that's an extraordinarily high level of commitment where they've said, we are interdependent. My well-being is deeply intertwined with yours, and so I'm going to share my income with you. And as soon as you do that, you get into these, it creates all these like problems that are really worth solving, which is like how do you do negotiation, and how do you do fairness? You know, how do you do fairness, and when everyone's like stressed out and all that sort of stuff. So those pods, I think we've got Root Systems has come out, and now the Golden Pandas is the second one, and I have a really good feeling that this idea of getting sort of between 5 and 9 people together and saying we're going to share, you know, freelancers, and saying we're going to share our income, and I guess the other component of that, they also need to have their own finances, their own independent sort of like, these are our books, this is what we share, and they need to have that clarity around it. That, I think, is a really strong pattern as well. And then the final pattern, I don't really know what the name is for it because I don't think we've quite ever grabbed it, but it's like a livelihood pod, but it goes to a next level. So one part of the next level is that there's explicitly, I think there must be democratic ownership and governance, and that's more about a much longer term than a livelihood pod. Like it's much more stable. That's why you need to have the governance piece, and it's about, I'm calling it regenerative commons. So it's not just we're looking after the 5 of us, but we're actually producing something, a commons that other people can work on top of. So the first example we've got of that is obviously the Enspiral Foundation. So that's owned by like 40 or 50 people, and that's the commons on which the whole network sits. The other example is Lumio. So we've got, I think we've got 11 owner workers at the moment, and we're still early days, of course, but our ambition is that we form this sustainable, this little sustainable business that then starts to grow a commons that other people can participate in. So whether that's just, you know, using the software that we're building, I mean, that's kind of a commons, but really what I'm thinking about is that this, constitutionally, we've designed ourselves so that the surplus that we make is used in service of other projects that share our social mission, which is quite closely aligned to how the Enspiral Foundation is set up. So I think there's another block there. So I don't know if any of this is useful. I just really want to hear what strikes you, what's the stuff that you're like, what's your aha moment? What have you been doing that's a bit similar, and maybe what's some better words for some of these things, because they're all like up for grabs.